All right, everybody, we are back live on Skywatchers Radio right here on PSN Radio and the Dark Matter Radio Network. And now, like we promised, our guest, Jeff Willis, is on with us, and he's going to be on live for the next hour and a half. So please, if you guys want to call in and ask him any questions, do so. The number is 786-245-8127. And again, you can find us on PSN Radio by looking that up on Skype. If you want to look us up on Skype, please do so. Call in. We'll take your calls. The guy that's doing all the heavy breathing there, that's Jeff Willis. Jeff, how you doing, sir? Welcome to Skywatchers Radio.
Hey, Alan. Hey, Angel. How you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good,
wonderful.
Man.
Great. Great to be on there with you guys.
Happy to have you on.
Jeff, since you're outside, are you recording anything right now?
No, I'm not. I don't see anything out there right now, but you know me, I'm out here watching all the time, most of the time.
Well,
any chance I get.
All right, Jeff, let me throw a question at you just to start opening the questions up. When people are recording, do people mostly find, and even from your own experience, do people mostly find stuff that they're catching on video in post-review, or while they're out there looking for something? Because from my experience and what I've seen that people are posting on the internet, there's a higher percentage of people that weren't really looking for something that caught something accidentally, that they found it in the footage later on.
Well, it always starts out like that, with people, it works both ways. You got the group of Skywatchers that are out all the time just dying to, get their next best piece of footage. And then you got the people that are just out and about doing their own business, and then all of a sudden they see something, and then they're able to record something amazing. And then when they analyze it and they find out that it's not an airplane or not a bird or a helicopter or something conventional, when those type of photographs show up, then it usually gets them involved in the UFO phenomenon. And then after some study, some people get hooked on it, some people don't. So, the people that get hooked, then they are out there skywatching like us, like the rest of us, sooner or later, hopefully.
Now, you got started a long time ago skywatching, and you've amassed, it says on your bio, at least 250 hours of solid UFO footage. Now, that's stuff that you've taken yourself, because we were asking earlier, is it stuff that you've taken or you've bought some of it? Yeah,
it's stuff that I took myself, because I started, I'll give you a little bit detail about how I started with the video photography of it all. You're familiar back in 1990, 91, when the solar eclipse over Mexico happened. Do you recall that?
Oh,
yes.
Sure,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a big thing for ufologists, because as a ufologist, I realized that when the solar eclipse happened, that people saw UFOs. And so a little bit more reading in on the subject, I discovered a guy named John Breaux that lived in California at the time. And I seen an article in the old Timothy Beckley UFO magazine where they had an article about John Breaux, and they talked about how he can videotape a UFO any time of the day. And so I kind of put the two together. I thought, wait a minute, a solar eclipse, and people are seeing UFOs where the sun should be, but it's not. And now here's a guy that blocks out the sun with his house, and he's able to see
solar
UFOs
obliteration,
in broad daylight.
Right, you're talking about the solar obliteration, where
right.
I'm familiar with the process actually. But
right.
from my understanding, more people were recording rods than actual UFOs.
Right,
when they were
and that
doing
was my right, and that was my next step. Is I was going to say later on during that same period, Jose Escamilla came out of nowhere with all these rod footage. And he became famous basically by doing the same thing that John Breaux was doing, and how he became famous in the UFO field. So I put both of them together, and I started doing the same technique, and I started getting both. I started getting lots of rods, and I started getting lots of UFOs. And this was after ruling out which ones were bugs, which ones were cotton, which was high-altitude insects, anything that you can explain away. We took those ones out of the equation, and then we were left with hundreds of hours of videos. and that was just in the solar technique footage. Later on, around I'd say 98 or 1999, I decided that a lot of the hardcore, big wigs in ufology, they kind of looked down at the solar footage, and they weren't too keen on it. And a matter of fact, they weren't afraid to tell people about it. So, there was a lot of good UFO footage shot in that manner, but the problem is there's a lot of junk shot the same way. So what I decided to do in around 98, 99, I decided to completely turn my back on the sun once and for all, and start videotaping footage, in the sky that wasn't related to that way of shooting UFO video. And sure enough, I was started to videotape some of the best smoking gun video sightings I've ever had in my whole life. And it just took off from there at that point.
Well, tell us more.
Okay. Well, first of all, when I first got into the video footage, I was working on a couple different UFO sites as a news editor. And once I did start getting into the smoking gun footage, shooting it myself after, a few years of doing the solar technique, I started getting amazing footage. Like I seen triangles, videotape triangles, the May 12, 2006 footage that I shot on North Phoenix on the Thunderbird Park area mountain here in Phoenix. People that are in this area will know what I'm talking about. But I shot this amazing footage, and I was with Pat Uskert from UFO Hunters, because this was way before UFO Hunters, like at least a couple of years before the show. But we were putting together a documentary called UFO Road Trip that we were working on, and so we were out investigating sightings in the area, and I caught this video of this triangular object appearing. It was basically lights that were skipping in front of each other, traveling it was weird. It looked like interdimensional travel or something, but all these people that analyzed the video were seeing like a triangle object. Well, the night after we videotaped it, I was like so impressed with the video, I sent it to Darbell, and he called me like very fast. Like it was like an hour after I sent him the video, he called me within an hour, and he told me that he'd like to have me on the show. And I was like, well, sure, So he put me on the show, and we talked about the piece of footage. And it had been a while since I'd been on with Art. I hadn't been on for a few years at that point. I was on a Dreamland show with him, but I was recorded by Linda Moulton Howe on the telephone, and the conversation between me and her were played back on a Dreamland episode about some different video footage I shot. This one, in the Dreamland episode, we were talking about a double dome video. It was like a cigar-shaped object with two domes on top and three balls of light on the bottom in the broad daylight, flying incredibly fast across the sky. And so mainly after the May 12th, 2006 footage, I filmed different triangles. I filmed a triangle over my house. This one is labeled on my website. By the way, my website's ufosoverphoenix.com. And there's this footage on there called 4/20/2006. And this footage shows a triangle. It basically starts out as two balls of light, and then the one ball disappears, and then there's one light left. Or there was three at first, and one disappears, and there's two left, and then the two turn into some sort of triangular-shaped object, and
right.
It just kind of hovers over my house. So, the video is amazing in itself. But
I've seen some of your footage, man, and I was pretty impressed. I'm going to be honest. You've put a lot of footage on the internet over the last few years, and I've had this conversation with Alan on the show with many guests that I don't really trust a lot of the footage that goes on the internet, especially the last 10 years, just because of the CGI and all the how easy it is to create some of this stuff. But you can almost always tell right off the bat what's CGI and what's kind of like authentic and legit, or at least something that would really take a lot of work to pull off. You know what I mean? And I've seen that in some of your footage that it really looks as authentic as it gets. As a Skywatcher though, and somebody who takes the subject as serious as you do and as we do here on the show, does it bug you though how rabid the internet is right now with all the hoaxing and all the people putting up CGI UFOs and trying to pass them off as real things?
Yeah, it's horrible. It just messes up the whole subject, and it's not good for the subject matter at all because no one knows what to believe anymore. I mean, like we were saying, my footage, you can tell it's shot in the camera, and it's some of the most amazing stuff out there. I mean, I shoot a daylight saucer in the middle of the day that you can see in broad daylight. It was featured on that Best Evidence Caught on Tape show by Bob Kiviat. You can see that on YouTube, and it shows me for about 15 minutes talking about my footage, and it's got a short interview of me. My footage has also been featured on the Walt Disney motion picture Race to Witch Mountain with The Rock. Like 5 of my clips are at the beginning of the movie.
The opener, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So my footage has also been on a DVD with Dan Aykroyd called Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs.
Yep.
And I actually just came out with a new DVD this year. I try to come out with one every year, but the new one's called Paranormal X, Finding ET. And I have basically 2 websites, ufosoverphoenix.com, and I have another one called ufofootage.net. And so people can check those 2 sites out.
Jeff, let me ask you, why do you believe that you are able to see UFOs at such a random rate or at such a high rate over the last couple decades?
I was going to say now we're opening up a Pandora's box.
Well, let me finish the question. Let me finish the question, and you'll be able to dissect Pandora's box pretty good on this one. Why do you think that you've had success taking so much footage, and a lot of people who've tried have not had as much success? Like for example, I've done a lot of sky watching over the last 5 years, 6 years, and I've had very little success catching anything good. Most of the stuff that I've caught, though, I've chalk it up to like satellites or funky looking planes from a different angle, some balloons from really far away. One thing that a lot of people get and they really don't understand sometimes when they're recording videos, there are occasions, especially during a weekend, where nearby car dealerships will release a bunch of balloons to replenish for the next week, to put new ones up, and they usually tie them in a bunch and they just release them. People see that from far away, they record it, they think it's a UFO, next thing you know, it's on YouTube as an authentic UFO. That happens all the time.
It happens all the time. There's lots of Skywatchers that post it, and the problem is it started a whole new phenomenon of people that think that the strings on balloons are some sort of propulsion system or some sort of arm that picks up animals or some crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, they're tentacles. I'm telling you, they're tentacles.
Yeah, tentacles, exactly. That's where I was going with it, and it just brings up a whole bunch of crazy people that just can't get past the fact that it's a balloon floating through the sky. I mean, I just don't get it.
But what's made you so successful compared to those people that are just fooling themselves?
Well, I mean, I take my footage and I look at it. If it looks like a balloon, if I can't tell if it's a balloon or not, or if there's no string on it and it still looks like it could be a balloon, it has to look more like an orb or more like a bona fide UFO before I'll post it. And I mean, I try not to post just the white dots. That I got so many of them that I haven't even posted online that it's not even worth posting them. I wait to basically shoot some smoking gun video and then I put it up there. I shot kind of a cylinder thing a few months back that looked a lot like the Tim Edwards footage from back in 1998, I believe it was. Looked pretty similar to it. And then I shot some other weird, like egg-shaped thing, or it basically looked like a probe of some sort over my house. A daylight footage not too long ago, 2013. I had probably about 2 or 3 videos from 2013, and then I usually save most of my videos for a DVD. At the end of the year, I'll put together a DVD with some of my footage and some of the other Skywatchers' footage that I work with. And, you know, we make a compilation of different types of footage, you know, and put it out there. Most of it's never seen on YouTube before, you know.
Right.
That way people get something that they've never seen.
Now, how many conventions do you do per year, traveling around showing new material?
It just depends. I usually do at least one a year, at least.
Okay.
But for the last few years, it's only been one a year. But I have been a speaker at a couple different conventions. I was a speaker at the Roswell UFO Conference, and I was a speaker at the International UFO Conference here in Phoenix. So those were my two speaking engagements. But mostly I do TV and radio, different types of programs on cable. Like my last show I was on was Chasing UFOs, Episode 5. I don't know if you're familiar with that show. Everybody hated it.
Yeah.
Chasing UFOs, they said it was just a joke. But even the researchers, you know, the on-camera, researchers complained about the show in an article. They bashed their own show and everything. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Alan. Go ahead.
No, one thing I don't understand is with so much interest in the UFO community and all the TV shows that actually get good ratings, why do they keep on getting canceled and another one has to pop up?
You know,
there's a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, like they always say, oh, we made an episode where we got too close to the truth and they shut us down. That's the most common one I hear. The other one is
it may be common, but is it a true answer?
It could be true in a lot of different cases, depending on what really happened. But a lot of times, I think that it's a network thing. So when the network doesn't get enough views on this program, and the other network's kicking their butt on that show, they either move the show to a different day, or they either get rid of the show. So that's kind of how they deal with it, unfortunately.
Sad.
And I know there's not a lot of UFO shows out there right now too. Like you're saying, there's just only probably I can count them on one hand, basically.
And you know what gets me is you had great shows like UFO Hunters was a really good show. I mean, you guys did really good work on that show, and it's sad when that show like went off the air. But then you have like shows like Ancient Aliens that from the very beginning, there's a lot of stuff on there. You know, it's kind of hokey. Some of it has been already proven to be false.
Right. I actually have that on my website. I've been trying to, be a on-camera co-host for a show. You know, I put it out there on my site that I'm here, I'm waiting, and no producers are calling me. And I'm more than willing to put my expertise in this field on camera on a show and actually get to the bottom of this. Send me to some places where we can find the truth about this kind of stuff, because it's like, the old saying goes, the truth is out there, all you have to do is find it,
Yeah, but do you think it might be the well's kind of like running a little dry in ufology, and maybe the interest is switching to like, more paranormal stuff or even more scientific stuff? Because look, Cosmos coming back has been, great. It's done, really well in the ratings. It's popular. Kids are talking about it. My nephews, who are, ignoramus when it comes to science. I mean, they're into movies, sports, comic books, all the good kid stuff. And one of my nephews came up to me and said, man, I've been watching that Cosmos show, and it's great. To hear my nephew say that, it really fills me with some joy to understand that a kid is getting something really great out of a science-based show that is clean and it's wholesome and is actually teaching them something positive. And, people are kind of leaning, I think, towards more in that direction. Do you think there is that cooling off period for ufology, which happens in every genre of everything? I mean, everything has a period where it kind of like goes away and then it comes back. You think we might be falling into that kind of period right now with ufology?
Yeah, are we at the point of saturation?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, I think what we're at the point is we're at the point of the lack of a study of where the phenomenon's really going. I mean, there's so many different aspects to the UFO phenomenon. I mean, you got the crop circles, you got the cattle mutilations, you got the human abduction scenario, you have the UFO phenomenon, which is a separate issue, because in a lot of these UFO abduction cases, you don't see a UFO with the entity. The entity just appears in your bedroom. The next thing you know, you're on a craft. There's no middleman UFO, and you don't see it usually landed or up in the air or whatever. You're just there, or the whatever the aliens are trying to do to you, or if they are aliens, they do it right there in the room, or you have a piece of missing time you don't remember, or you remember seeing something that doesn't make sense, or something like this, So there's lots of different aspects to it. What I mean by the study of where it's going is there's very few ufologists that have actually figured out that the paranormal, like ghosts and different aspects of the paranormal are connected with the alien abduction phenomenon. There's some aspects to synchronicity. I've had some synchronicity events that lead up to a UFO encounter or a sighting of an entity. And I know this all sounds crazy to maybe people that aren't as deep into it as a lot of people are, or people that have, and I mean deep into it. What I mean by that is actual experiencers. I mean, it's one thing to videotape a UFO, but it's another thing to actually find out why you've been videotaping these UFOs.
Right.
And
which, by the way, that kind of ties into like the question I had earlier for you, like, what's made you so successful in capturing UFO footage?
Yeah, that's why I said it was kind of a Pandora's box, because this all started way before I videotaped my first UFO.
Okay,
Right.
I got to throw a question out here. You're telling me that there is a direct correlation with paranormal experiences, such as ghosts and
of course,
things like that, with UFOs. Okay, in that case, I've got a really interesting question. Why is it then that ghosts and such show up on scientific equipment like EMF meters and infrared video cameras and things like that?
Ooh, I'd love to answer that, but I want to let Jeff hit that one up first.
And we get English EVPs, but we really don't get anything similar to that when it comes to UFOs.
Well, my answer to that is it's either an entity pretending it's a ghost, or an entity making a voice on a tape recorder to make you think it's a ghost, or it's an actual spirit that never inhabited a body, or it could be a spirit that did inhabit a body at one time but that has passed away. So now right there we have 3 different answers, and no one knows what it really is yet. So this is the problem with it. The other thing that the other thing the UFO phenomenon has in common with the paranormal is the near-death experience scenario and the actual death in itself. There has been witnesses that have actually claimed to have seen dead relatives on board a UFO with the graves standing right next to them, and asking them to tell a message to their family members to tell them that they're fine, they're okay, and they pass this message on, and the family members think they're crazy or something, but it really happened to them. So,
I've never heard of this one. So
these stories are out there. These stories are out there. There's books. There's a book by Ray Fowler, The Watchers 2, that talks a little bit about near-death experience and their relationship to UFOs. So there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to quote that. Actually, I have heard about that before, Alan, and it doesn't shock me that some people would have those kind of experiences. In fact, we've talked about this on the show before, and at least my personal belief is that a lot of paranormal activity, especially years, like 100 years ago, 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago, stuff that people considered demons, goblins, ghosts, stuff that people were afraid of in the dark that they might have seen. A lot of that were aliens that were probably misidentified because they didn't know any better on how to identify these things. And over the years, there's been different lore and mythology that's been built up. And who's not to say that? Look, who's not to say that the whole ghost phenomenon is not us looking at, for example, beings from another dimension, and not so much ghost, of people that died here and then went to heaven, but maybe when we die, we go to another dimension, and we're trying to bleed our way through back to this dimension to, get a message across or something like that. In fact, Art Bell, a long time ago, talked about the veil dropping and how, one day maybe that veil will drop and we'll be able to contact other dimensions and other sides, and who knows what that would bring. And I think that really kind of correlates with the whole alien phenomenon. I think that veil kind of is dropping, Jeff, and I think that might be what we're seeing when we see a lot of the correlations between aliens and ghosts and paranormal phenomenon.
Right, and it's to answer your question before, is why is there a decline in this type of subject matter and decline in these type of shows? Now, I don't really know if there is a decline to ufology or a decline to the interest of UFOs and ufology in these type of shows, but I do know that if there is a decline in it, that may be the reason why, is because people, they start to dive into this stuff and they start to think that maybe these aliens are demonic, and then they don't want to have nothing to do with UFOs at all, and they totally get out of it. So, I mean, that could be
wait a minute. The Vatican's willing to baptize them now. What are you talking about?
That's a good point.
Yeah. And I wonder why they're so interested in the UFO phenomenon. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, they maybe have some questions to answer.
Well, first answer I want from them is, why do they name their telescope Lucifer?
Yeah, exactly. And if they're gonna baptize the alien, are they trying to convert the alien to Christianity, or what are they trying to do there? I don't really understand that. But I mean, the thing is, though, if the alien's real, then it should be able to tell us a lot more about Christianity than we know, because if they have a civilization that's older than us, then that means that they met God probably a lot longer than we did. So I don't get why the Vatican would think that they were smarter than an alien, if you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think the Vatican, in their defense, I think what they've done is they've kind of cleared the way for disclosure one day to happen and say, look, it is part of God's plan to have multiple planets with life. That's all part of the design, the grand scheme of things. Because, why would God, and this is questioning, God in a way, but they would probably say, why would God create the heavens, the earth, the universes, the planets, the stars, the galaxies, everything, and then just have one planet with life? No, God's work is everywhere. It's all in nature. It's abundant, and it's clear that life is everywhere because God seeded life everywhere. And I'm sure that's the stance they're going to take when disclosure does happen, because at the end of the day, it's called damage control. They don't want to be the only fish in the sea saying, "Hey, there's no aliens. That can't be real. God doesn't say that aliens exist." They don't want to be that fish out of water. You know what I mean? They want to be part of the plan.
They basically want to be ready in case it does really happen. If the aliens really do land on the White House lawn and get out and introduce themselves on the Today Show and all this good stuff like everybody really wants it to happen. If that happens, then sure they'll be ready. But that's never going to happen probably because of the fact that it may be that whole Star Trek thing where there's a prime directive that they don't interfere with different planets.
Yeah.
If they are real. I mean, I know
we're not civilized enough. Unfortunately, we're not civilized enough.
Right. Now, I've seen a lot of strange stuff, and I've videotaped a lot of strange craft in the sky, but are they alien or are, that's the $1 million question. That's
right.
Why shows like yours exist, Well, we're still talking about it.
To clarify one thing, when I said that it might be dying off a little bit, or the well might be drying off, I'm not talking about the fan reaction or the fan interest, or us doing radio online or stuff like that. I'm talking about like network wide, and I'm talking about like TV wide. It does seem like they're switching. It's a conditioning. It's a conditioning that's going on to kind of make it into a hokey subject again.
Well, it's kind of like we were talking earlier, when they get really close to the truth, but and then that scares the network, and sometimes they're trying to investigate a story, and the story takes strange twists and turns, and that it would have never thought that was going to happen in a million years, and now they have to edit this program with all these crazy things that happened, and the network, they always view the show, of course, before they air it. And every time they view a show, it gets weirder and weirder and stranger, and at some point in time, I think that's when the executives come in and they're like, well, this is pushing our belief system at some point, and it's not pushing ours, of course, because we study this stuff all the time. We're well aware that this type of stuff is happening, but to the average Joe Schmo television producer executive walking down the street, going to his job at History Channel or Discovery Channel, they look at it as entertainment purposes, and now when they're confronted with a program that's cutting edge, getting to the truth, and telling you stuff you don't want to hear, at that point, maybe the hierarchies cut the shows off at that point. I don't know. I really don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but
yeah,
it seems
I think
like
it's a little. I think it's further back than that.
Losing it. The shows keep disappearing, like you were saying, though.
Yeah, no, I think it goes further than just the people at the actual networks. I think it goes, the people that are controlling the media in general. Behind the scenes, the puppeteers. They control even the heads of the networks. They're the ones that are doing the conditioning, and I really truly believe that there's a reconditioning on the subject over the next last 5 years and the next 15 years. And I think they're doing it on purpose to kind of like wean away people from the interest of UFOs and the subject in general. And, we're seeing all kinds of people attacked also in ufology. I mean, look what some of the folks have gone through recently, like Stan Romanek and them. And even though, look, there's still a jury to be out about the whole thing with Stan Romanek, but the fact that they've gone and investigated him and have gone after him, and, we also had William Cooper. I had the government go after him years ago, and it's nothing new that the government would go after some of these people. So, what do you think of like people like Stan Romanek, for example, and what he's going through?
They just also, by the way, had an interesting video. 25 years later, Bob Lazar. I saw that on the internet.
Another one, yeah.
Yeah.
Another one who got discredited real quickly by government officials and other folks in ufology. But what do you think of like the current state of ufology in general when it comes to like the mass media and the way they're controlling the scenes with stuff like Stan Romanek, for example?
Well, you're right. It's like all, it's like you were saying, I don't really know what happened there, but it's like they don't want to, the mass media, they don't want to report that a guy's videotaping an alien outside his window, but then when something happens, like what happened, all of a sudden they want to report that, so it's, even if if he was framed or whatever, it's like you're, they don't want to print the real story. I mean, now, the jury's still out on his videos, of course, because we don't know. Somebody could have been out there playing a joke on Stan, or who knows? We just don't know yet. But that's where the media is going with it. They only want to report what they want to report. When it comes to UFOs, the mainstream media does not want to have anything to do with UFOs whatsoever. That's why these shows are disappearing from the cable channels, because they probably get backlash every time they put one of these shows on the air. They probably get calls all day long by people that are pissed off about it. So,
it's amazing. And then they have like 400 shows on TV with televangelists and all kind of preachers trying to take your money. Well,
the UFO thing's a completely different thing altogether, and people just don't. The hardcore people, it's going to have its crowd, but it's hard to win people over to even look at the subject matter, because, like you said, I mean, and like everybody knows, anybody that studies the subject matter of UFOs, if they're not freaked out and scared and start running away from it within the first 10 minutes of it, then it's a different, it's a different animal. Somebody who researches UFO footage, UFO type of related stuff, anybody who deals with the UFO phenomenon is a totally different animal than the normal people out there. And, I've looked at myself my whole life, sitting in elementary school class in the third grade, and I look at thinking to myself, I'm different than all these kids. Why is that? And I find out later, but I think we're chosen for this. I mean, it sounds crazy, but that's how I feel about it.
Now, you don't mean like new agey, like star seed chosen type of people? Like
No, it's got nothing to do with that. It's like, let's just say, okay, there's a lot of people out there that could have had contacts and not even realized it. but they're interested in
That's
UFOs. True. Why is that? Why are you interested in UFOs? Like, look at yourself. What got you into this, and why are you so into it? Did you ever have any strange experiences when you were a kid that you can't explain? I mean,
I could answer that, and the answer is yes. Actually, I've had several. I had two sightings. Yeah, I had two sightings as a kid. And you know what's really funny, Jeff? This tripped me out years ago because my father was always into alien movies and space stuff. Like, he introduced me to Star Wars and a lot of like the sci-fi stuff of the '80s. Even though he didn't speak the language, he would always get him in Spanish so he could understand what was going on. He loved sci-fi movies, and he took me to go see Fire in the Sky when it came out in theaters. And we went to a theater down here. They played it with subtitles, and he was glued to this movie theater. And let me tell you, he was a huge fan of the whole case for years. He knew about the Travis Walton case. And when the movie started, there's a scene when the aliens are doing their experiment on Travis, and they put that goo down his mouth, and they knock him out, and he completely blacks out a couple seconds later. That gave me the worst case of deja vu, and I was a kid back then. But that scene alone freaked me out. Like, if I had actually experienced that at some point in my past, not even kidding. That's how strong and powerful that scene was to me, to the point that I got even more interested in the subject. I don't think that I was abducted, but you never know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'd say there is a percentage of people that are involved in the UFO phenomenon, no matter what aspect of the UFO phenomenon they're involved in. There is a certain percentage of those number of people that are abductees that have no clue of it whatsoever.
Right.
And that's why they're interested in the subject, because they have been. It's like a hypnotist could plant suggestions, or you can talk to some hypnosis guy, and then he'll do his thing and say, "You're not going to remember any of this," and then snap his fingers, and the whole conversation's gone from your mind. It's in your subconscious mind. All of a sudden, it's not in the forefront anymore. It's buried in there.
Right.
And when you see a suggestion, then you remember it. They can plant a suggestion. They can make you never remember it. Eventually, maybe you will. I mean, I don't know how powerful hypnosis is, but the aliens, if they have a lot of the abduction scenarios, they say there's missing time. There's events they don't remember. They erase memories from people's minds. Now, all of a sudden, if you had an experience when you're a kid, they erase it from your mind, but you see a UFO in a newspaper article, and all of a sudden you're drawn to it. You buy it, and you're fascinated by it, and then you buy every book on the subject, and you're completely you can't separate yourself from it. Why is that? It's because of that they can't completely erase it. They do that so that you get involved in it. They want you to be involved in it. They want you to spread the word on it. I mean, even if these aliens turn out to be extraterrestrials, maybe that is their only way to get the message across the earth, because they don't want to land and meet our president and our government, because they've been shooting at them for all these years. So why would they land? The only way that they can get the message across is through the grassroots movement, through UFOs or mass sightings or whatever. It's really their only card they can play, really.
Well, hey, Jeff, Jeff, let me throw a question out for you. With all the video recording that you've done and stuff that you've seen, how many of them have you recorded that actually show military intervention? The reason I ask is because one thing that I've always been fascinated by is one of the STS shuttle videos where it shows that we possibly might have been shooting something at a UFO. And I'm wondering, have you recorded anything like that?
Two of my videos, actually, yeah. The one, the May 12th video, 2006, after the triangle or the balls of light disappeared, the F-15 showed up a few minutes later and circled the area where the UFO had disappeared. And then earlier, in 1998, I recorded this black disc-shaped object in the middle of the afternoon hovering over my apartment complex. And it actually, it kind of started different. I was lying in bed and completely, totally asleep. And all of a sudden, have you ever been asleep and have somebody fool around with you, like pull your leg or pull your arm or touch you or something like that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
I was lying in bed totally asleep, and I felt somebody grab my leg and start pulling on my leg. And I woke up, totally freaked out because I'm living alone. There's no one in the apartment or whatever. So I wake up freaked out. I look, nothing's there at all. At that point, I open up my blinds, look out the window, look up in the sky, and there's a black object hovering above my apartment complex. Probably about, I'd say it's hovering about 3 blocks up in the sky, I would say, in distance, and the thing's probably about the size of a Jeep Cherokee or something up there, just like a black hockey puck up there. I videotape it for about probably, I'd say, 15 minutes as it slowly hovers higher and lower, and then it goes a little bit to the north, and then backs up and goes a little to the south, and then it kind of does a little, little motion back and forth and further away. Finally, it starts to go behind a tree to where I can't see it anymore. At that point, right when it goes behind the tree, I'm waiting for it to come out the other end. It never does. But about 10 seconds later, there was like 5 or 6 double-bladed black helicopters come out of nowhere and circle the area, making so much noise the whole complex was rumbling. And they did like one pass, and then they flew off. So it was pretty amazing.
Really?
Man, I got it all on video. It's on the site.
Yep.
I can't really remember what video it is. I think it's January 17th, 1998 or 1999 or something like that. It was so long ago. But yeah, military involvement. Definitely.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I've always wondered if maybe Doctor Who got it right with remember the episodes with the race called the Silence. That every time you turn away from the gray-looking aliens, they wipe your memory so you don't remember anything. Maybe that's what's going on.
Maybe there's some people that do remember it, full recall, like Betty Andreasen, the Andreasen affair, and also there's other people that remember bits and parts of it, like Travis Walton. Of course, remember the Pascagoula, Mississippi event with Calvin Parker and the other guy, the fisherman that saw the UFOs capture them. Remember that case?
That one I don't recall. Which you're not talking about Rendlesham Forest?
This was in the 70s.
Okay.
It was Pascagoula, Mississippi. Calvin Parker and this other guy, where they were fishing, and a UFO lands behind them. This was in 3 a.m. or whatever, and it abducts them. And it's the aliens. You'll remember this. It's the only aliens that were probably ever witnessed like this. But the drawings of the aliens, they had spikes on their heads, like 1 on the top and 2 on each side. Do you remember those drawings?
Yep, I remember the drawings you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. Now this is the only case in ufology where the aliens were drawn like this. Now, are these robots, or what are these guys? Are these just robots designed by the aliens to go out and do their bidding so they don't have to risk themselves in our environment? Or what are these spiked head creatures? I mean, no one ever had a UFO sighting with these guys ever since then. And so where do they fit in? So, I mean, you have the Space Brothers case of the 50s and 60s where people saw regular white guys come down in saucers, and then you have the 80s and 90s where the Greys are full swing, but then the Greys really started back in the Barney and Betty Hill case in the late 60s. So
and remember, you can't forget our Martian green friends also from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. So you got all these different types of races supposedly coming, and no one knows really what's going on. So,
well, I mean, is part of that could it be really, Jeff, that part of it is kind of conditioning through movies and media and stuff like that? What is popular in the movies is usually what people would tend to see a lot more of. When Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, the little gray aliens became like the norm. Right after that, Communion used them. That kind of became like the image of the aliens for like the last 3 decades.
Well, supposedly the Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie was actually designed to actually tell the story of people that actually did have those encounters, and they actually took the stories from different people, the description of what they look like and stuff. So, the only thing missing from that, it was basically it was basically a fiction movie, of course, but they should have at least did a disclaimer at the beginning that said that these accounts are described by people that have witnessed the same thing, or something like that, or based on the experiences of people, something like that. Maybe they did. I can't remember. It was so long ago.
They did, but Spielberg did that a couple times. I mean, even with Poltergeist, for example, that was loosely based on a real story that he had heard, and then he decided to do Poltergeist. So I mean, he did that, and other movies like even The Exorcist is based on, and that's not Spielberg, but even The Exorcist was based on a real case of exorcism, and it was a little boy, not a little girl. I think it was in the 60s or 70s, I want to say, but it's 60s, I believe. But I mean, that's not that uncommon also. But right there, we're talking about reality influencing art, influencing reality.
Right, and you got to remember, this all started even earlier in the when in the 30s, and when they put them in the comic books, the invaders from Mars and all this stuff, and even those old black and white TV shows, Invaders from Mars or whatever, and stuff. So it kind of got it out there to begin with. But was it based on fiction, or was it based on someone that saw something and put it on film, or wrote their ideas on paper and it became a film? So we really don't know the origins of where these things come from, especially when you can even go back further and find the tablets on or whatever in caves, drawings of disc-shaped objects, hieroglyphs that go back thousands of years, or so there you are. I mean.
No, it's pretty amazing, some of the stuff that does go back a long, long time. Especially like the cave art that looks very ET-ish. It looks very gray, or like they look like the grays. And some of the stuff that they've been finding over the years is phenomenal.
There's even ones where it shows like a guy with an astronaut helmet and a rocket and an airplane and a jet and a helicopter, and all these things were carved on the side of rock like thousands of years ago. So either they had a glimpse into our future, or somebody from the future went back and showed them what we're going to have, or there was some sort of race of beings that were interacting with them that had all that stuff. But it came from another place, or it did come from Earth, but they had their base underground or whatever. It was hidden from the people that were primitive or whatever,
I'm thinking those that got lost in the Bermuda Triangle ended up in Egypt.
Possible.
Well, well, who am I to put someone's theory down,
Well, look, at this point, you got to suspend your disbelief, man. You just go with whatever. Anything is possible.
We're clutching at straws here, as to what the answer is. We don't know the answer. God only knows when we'll know the answer. And let's not even bring God into it.
Yeah, I don't even think God has a clue at this point. Right now, God is like, well, it's really up to the U.S. government at this point. I'm not intervening anymore. It's all up to them.
At this point, people have to decide for themselves. I mean, really, because the only way you're going to know for sure is through your own spirit, because these things contact you by physical means, but they also contact you by your spirit. I mean, if you guys believe in your essence, your spirit, your soul, whatever you want to call it, your essence, your inner being. Like if you believe that if you die, that your soul's going to still be there, you're still going to be somewhere,
right?
But just not in your body. Well, whatever these guys are in these ships, they can interact with you both ways. They can interact with you physically and spiritually, or out of body, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you got to remember, a lot of these abductions are astral abductions, where people see themselves lying on the couch because they've just been removed from their body by an entity, and off into a UFO they go, and they're put on a table just like the physical abductions, and then they're given an examination and maybe a scoop mark scar on their leg. The next morning they wake up in their bed, back in their body, and the scar's there. Like in Betty Andreasen's case, the alien showed up while she was lying on her couch. He pushed a button on his belt, and she came out of her body and was standing right next to the alien, looking back at her body lying on the couch. The alien looked at her and said, "It's time to go." The next thing she knows, she was on board the ship. So they can abduct you physically and astrally. Like we discussed before, people have seen their dead relatives on board UFOs. So, there's something that is connected with it. And I don't really know exactly how it is. He pushed a button on his belt, so that shows that it's technology on one hand. Now, if I had a technology on my belt, I can push a button and make you come out of your body and take your essence somewhere and then put you back in later. That's some pretty heavy-duty stuff right there.
Yeah, no kidding. Listen, I got a question from chat here. Cali Guy wants to know in our chat room. By the way, if anybody wants to join our chat, is psn-radio.com/listen-chat-live. So go there. But Cali Guy wants to know if you have done any research on underground bases, including Phil Schneider and some of the claims he made before he left us.
Well, the underground bases, all the faculties are connected. I mean, the Cheyenne Mountain, the Area 51, the one up in Mount Shasta, the Dulce base. All of these bases have underground. I would say they have underground tunnels that lead to each one, with probably some type of bullet train type of transportation, or maybe even. You can get crazy. I mean, you can take what Andrew Biasiago says and just say that there's jump rooms and these people can teleport themselves all over the country. They don't, all the top secret people can just if you're this level above top secret, you're allowed to teleport yourself wherever, to this base or to that base or to Mars or whatever, if you want to get that crazy. But I mean, the theories are out there and there's all these stories out there. So, all I can go on is what other people have already come up with, and then put my 2 cents to it, and what I think about it. But I do think that all the bases are connected, and I do think there's underground tunnels to each one of them.
Do you think that disclosure is imminent, and do you think that a lot of the construction of the underground bases, especially in the last decade, which there's been a lot of rumors of a lot of different bases constructed, do you think a lot of that has to do with the imminent upcoming disclosure that we might be getting in the next 5 years?
It depends on how many more whistleblowers come out of the woodwork and tell their stories like Bob Lazar dared to do. And he's still alive, 20 years later, he's still alive, and the story that he told is, it's pretty fascinating. I believe it, to tell you the truth. I do believe in his story, and I believe every word of it. It's just because
that's fun. That's funny you mentioned. Let me stop you right there. It's funny you mentioned because I had this conversation about Bob Lazar about a week and a half ago with another gentleman who I'm not going to name. But he's in ufology. He's really, really well known, and I just don't want to name drop because it wouldn't be fair. But it's safe to say that he thought Lazar was completely full of BS. And I'm not talking about Stanton Friedman either, by the way, because I know Stanton has his issues with Bob Lazar. But this person really just does not believe a word that Bob Lazar was saying, and he was throwing at me all certain information, how there was no records found that really showed that he worked at Los Alamos, that the one record that they had was a phone record, which could have been anything. There were certain details that were kind of screwy. He couldn't prove that he worked at Area 51, which was really that for me was the clincher. If he could find some kind of evidence, but my thing back to that was, well, of course there's not going to be any evidence. They don't want him to prove that he worked there, but you would figure that he would keep a pay stub or something. You know what I mean?
Well, it's hard to really say what really happened there. I don't know. I just there's something about his story, I believe. I don't know what it is. It's just that all the details, and it's why would he do it? I mean, why would he? I mean, he didn't make any money off of it.
I don't know. I don't know about that. Look,
he may have made a little, but
he's
a scientist. He can make a lot more doing the type of work that he does. I mean, he works on jet engines and jet cars and stuff like that. I mean, he can make a living without UFOs in his life, and to come up with that it just doesn't make sense because. The element 115 thing, it just all makes sense. The way that he shows on chalkboard how the ship works, and it doesn't make sense that he would come up with all that by himself. I mean, it seems like
but the thing is,
briefing documents on the Zeta Reticuli beams that the government gave him, I mean, I'm sure anybody could have researched ufology and maybe come up with a story like that.
Well, yeah, but no, here's the thing, though. The element 115, they have been talking about that scientifically since the 70s, so that's not really, like, that wasn't a new element that he just came out and said, all right, here's an element they're using and nobody knows about. Science actually knows about element 115 since the 70s, like I said, and the most they've ever been able to do with that element is make it stable for a few seconds before it becomes unstable, so there really isn't any working element 115 yet. Wait a
minute. Wasn't there an announcement, like, in the past 3 or 4 weeks that 2 new elements were found, and I believe one of the numbers was 115?
Yeah, they've discovered it, but they can't make it work permanently. It dissolves immediately. Like in a couple seconds, it completely evaporates or goes. I mean, it doesn't work. Basically, it is an element, but it's not an element they discovered. They discovered it by mixing a lot of different chemicals together, and that's how they created element 115. Well, but they've known about this since the 70s.
Bob even says that, and I'm sure you've watched the excerpts from the Government Bible. I'm sure you've watched the documentary, right, where he explains everything. Well, I think he mentioned something like that it's very unstable.
Right.
But when he put it in the reactor and it turns into antimatter, and then that's what it uses to bend and warp space-time, and that's how they can get 30 Zeta Reticuli is 33 light years away. That's how they can get from there to here within just a couple seconds, because they're not traveling in a straight line at the speed of light. They're bending and folding space-time, and that's how they get here in a couple seconds. So. And how he explains that's how they move faster than the speed of light and all that. It just
wormhole technology.
At first, when I first saw the documentary, and then he took them to see the UFOs in flight. Actually, before he came forward with the story, he took John Lear out there because he had he knew when they were going to fly him. Remember that story? And then he took John Lear out there, and they videotaped the UFOs flying over Area 51, even though they were...
Well, they videotaped crafts flying from Area 51, but, I mean, that could be a stuffed bomber from far away. I mean, it could be
you saw the loop that one did. Remember, I don't know if you remember the old video, but when that first came out, it was on the old Sightings television show.
Right. Yep.
And remember it did like a weird angle loop, and then another one did this weird spiral down towards the ground and then shot way back up into the sky. I mean, there was more than one object in that video, I believe.
Right. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. But again, that stuff is, it could be a number of things. It could be alien aircrafts. It could be stuff that we've back engineered. Most likely is stuff that we've been working on in black budget projects for many years. I mean, there's a list of different projects that
But the thing is he knew exactly when they were going to fly it, and he brought Lear out there to view it. And sure enough, it happened. I mean, I don't know.
Here's part of the conversation that we got into with this this unnamed person that I was talking to. The Mirage Men movie came out recently, and Dottie and all these people are speaking about the whole thing being a big conspiracy, big cover-up, a big hoax on their part, and the MJ-12 documents being a big hoax. A lot of the stuff that we were talking about, dealing with the Mirage Men and the fallout from that, and even tying into Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar could easily have been duped and used to push this information out there by certain people in certain positions.
No doubt about it. And I think that there's a high probability that the MJ-12 documents are hoaxed. However, maybe the reason why that hoax happened was because someone out there was part of MJ-12. And they had no other way to get the information about the program out there but to hoax a document to talk about it. And, I mean, that kind of stretches the whole thing. But, if you were a part of a secret program and you're already 80 or 90 years old now and no one knows about it, maybe someone went to great lengths to try to hoax something to try to at least get the story out there.
So you're saying plausible deniability.
Right, and even though later they find out it's a whole hoax, now it's been the MJ-12 things out there, and maybe new documents will come forward in the future that confirm MJ-12, and these documents may end up being the real deal this time. So, we just don't know really.
Which, by the way, it would be really bad if that's the case, because how are we going to, tell apart the truth from the fake stuff when we have so much misdirection with the hoaxing going on?
And
that's, I think, that's what's happening here.
Real easy. When Edward Snowden leaks it all, we'll know it's the truth.
Perhaps.
Well, actually, didn't that conversation come up where Snowden or one of his work cohorts had said that they have tons of documents on the UFO phenomenon and how the government is involved?
Well, yeah, and the thing is if a document is proved hoax, that's fine. It's a hoax, and we don't want people to hoax government documents. We have too many government documents out there that are real as it is. I mean, look at the blackvault.com and John Greenwald. He's collected so many government documents on UFOs and other government-related paranormal things through FBI and National Security Agency and CIA and all sorts of stuff, and it points right to the fact that they know UFOs are real. They admit it in these documents, and they actually have a relationship with them to where they hunt these things. They're involved in different cases, all sorts of stuff. I mean, you name it. I mean, also, look at Timothy Good in his book Above Top Secret. There's a whole crap load of secret documents that are all blacked out in the back of his book obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. So they know about UFOs. We don't know if they know what they are, but, Area 51's there for a reason. I'm sure it's there to design secret stuff and all this great stuff that this country wants to throw their black budget, trillions of dollars, around down there and come up with whatever they're going to come up with. But, the anti-gravity thing, where people were seeing these anti-gravity UFOs, goes all the way back to the World War II with the Nazis. And if they had designed these anti-gravity UFOs and we somehow captured them after the war, then we were already a step up on anti-gravity craft.
Yeah.
Now, all these craft weren't space travel craft, but they did get us to the first step of anti-gravity if they were real. And by this time, 60 years later, whatever, we've come a long ways.
I'm going to stop right there because we do have to hit a break here in a minute. But it's really funny you bring the conversation to the Nazis and the possibility of them having this type of technology. That's also been something that's been hotly spread over the last couple of decades. The involvement of the Nazis with the occult, with the possibility of having created flying saucers or have the schematics of flying saucers given to them by possible aliens or interdimensional beings and all kinds of really weird stuff, which even could get into the Roswell situation, because what happened to Roswell could easily have been a crash of an aircraft that we created based on their technology. And that's also something that's been hotly debated in ufology for quite a while. What's the freakiest stuff that's happened to you over the last decade or 2 decades since you've been involved heavily in ufology?
I got to say, I mean, this pretty much really all started when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I was lying in bed, and I got to tell you, I was completely wide awake. I was not asleep at all, and something grabbed my hand. I mean, the lights were out; it was pitch black, and something grabbed my hand, like if someone was going to grab and hold your hand, like with their hand, and I felt it. And at that point, I got kind of scared because it's like, why is there something that's not supposed to be there holding my hand? So of course you panic and you like become frozen, scared, with fear where you can't even move, and like petrified basically. And so I was so scared I couldn't move. And at that moment, I got enough courage to reach out as fast as I could and turn on the lamp. And as soon as I did that and turned the lamp on, as soon as the light filled the room, there was nothing there. The pressure released, and there was no person or whatever it was holding my hand at all, and it was completely gone. And now I'm like 6 years old, and I'm just realizing that there's a different reality, one that's separate from the one that we wake up and go to school or work and do every day. There's something separate from that. So now I'm introduced to something I don't want to know about. And at the same time, I'm a kid, so I do want to know about it, So I went to.
Let me ask you.
Yeah,
Do you think?
ahead.
Let me ask you real quick about that experience. I mean, do you think that in any possible way it could have been like sleep paralysis or anything of that nature? Because I mean, I suffer from sleep paralysis myself, and I've had instances where I wake up in the middle of the night and I swear there's like all kinds of people in the room, and you could see shadows and stuff. But then I just stay lying there, and it goes away.
I would have thought that if I had gone to sleep first, maybe that could have been an explanation, but I just barely got into bed, and I was just started to lay down, like within like 5 or 6 minutes. And another thing is the sleep paralysis is something that is a word that's thrown out there by doctors that really don't know what sleep paralysis really is. Maybe it is some sort of attack by some sort of entity or a...
I hope not, because it happens to me a lot. So I'm hoping it's not some kind of paranormal entity.
Well, I've had it happen to me too, but it's also accompanied an entity. Like you said, you felt like there was people in your room. Well, when you come out of the sleep paralysis, what it is that basically... If sleep paralysis isn't just a scientific thing that happens to your body in between sleep and in between awaking, where you're like stuck there, where you can't move. If it's not something that's normal or natural, if it's not that, then it has to be something else. Because why would it feel like there was beings present during a natural phenomenon like that? I mean, why?
Well, that could be attributed to a neurological thing. I mean, they've done tests in scientific laboratories where they've done brain surgery on patients, and they've mimicked abduction scenarios and different hallucinations and all kinds of stuff. But not to cut you off, real quick, Jeff, we do have a caller that just joined the show here, 651. You're live with Jeff Willis on Skywatchers Radio. You have any questions for the guest?
Yes, I had a question. Do you think that the UFOs are just looking for something? Because it just seems like they come more frequent now, and I live here in Minnesota, and all of a sudden now I keep seeing more and more UFOs, and it's not like they've done any harm to us or anything. So I'm just wondering if there's just something that's on their planet that they're looking for themselves.
Well, good question. Jeff, do you want to drop an answer on that one?
Well, I think that sightings are increasing. I mean, if you visit some of the reporting pages, like Peter Davenport's UFO Reporting Center, you'll see that over the years, the sightings in each state have increased. And if this is just their way, like we were talking about earlier, to get the word out to people that see them, that there's something else out there, then that may just be their only way to contact the average person walking down the street, to convince them that there's something else out there.
Yeah, it's funny if you look at a chart from the last 20 years, the last 15 years, and you look at the amount of sightings and reports and stuff, it keeps rising every year. But like I was saying earlier, the media coverage is going down. So while the individuals are reporting more, it's funny how the regular news media doesn't want to report it even less nowadays than 10 years ago. It's not as popular as we're seeing on TV shows. There's a whole different agenda going on behind the scenes. But caller, go ahead. You had another question for Jeff?
Yeah, I was wondering, do you think it's because the U.S. government is trying to go after them for whatever that they're doing, seeking or whatever they're looking for?
They might not know.
Like when the UFOs come around or whatever, that the military just snaps into action and they just disappear.
Wouldn't that make sense, though? I mean, the military would snap into action if they are not familiar with what's going on, because, if let's just say this is a need-to-know basis type of operation, the president probably won't need to know. Some compartments of the government won't need to know. Some compartments of the military won't need to know. It's very, very black budgeted and very compartmentalized, and at this point, there's a good chance that if they do see a craft in the sky somewhere and some army bases nearby, they're going to go after it because they don't know any better, and it's not their fault necessarily. I mean, Jeff, would you agree with that answer?
Yeah, I would. I mean, the thing is, though, is there's so much, there's so many things up there that are being videotaped. We don't know whether they're these drones or alien UFOs or what, now, because you got so many drones flying around now there's going to be all sorts of misidentifications as it is. But we're talking about sightings 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or just, even in the 90s even. Who knows? These top secret drones have been around for so long, they may have been flying them and been mistaken by UFOs all the time. So.
Oh, right. Now, I was wondering, though, too, these UFOs that do come into our airspace and things like that, are the U.S. government taking military actions? Are they shooting at them or anything like that?
Well, when the bona fide UFO shows up, the military, it's kind of funny when I think of a UFO, and then I think of the military catching it on radar, and then all of a sudden they say, "Where is it? It's gone. It went off our screen." I think to myself, a UFO and aliens inside of it, and then they see themselves on the government's radar, and they push a button, and all of a sudden they're off radar. It's like they're playing games with us. If the military tries to surround them, it's not going to work. And they already know that. They've learned that over the years, over the last 50 years. It doesn't work like that. So all they can really do is just, keep tabs on, back in the day, they used to scramble a bunch of jets after it or something. They don't do that anymore now. They visualize it on radar, and then if it sits there for a while, maybe they'll send, some helicopters or a jet to check it out, or a couple F-15s or something. But they don't really, they kind of just observe it from a distance, it seems like, before they would engage. And if you recall, we were talking about earlier, the study of UFOs, you'll find that the pilots that engaged UFOs in the past became dead. So maybe they don't want to do that anymore. And to talk about what we talked about before with the Nazi UFOs, if, people that study UFOs will find out that there's a lot of paperwork out there that shows these honeyboo models and these anti-gravity machines. It's all over ufology if you search the German UFO projects and stuff like that. The anti-gravity UFOs have been around a long time, and maybe the people that take pictures of them throughout the years or videotape them, maybe they were mistaking the anti-gravity craft for the alien craft in a lot of cases. Not to say that alien craft aren't there and that they haven't been sighted, because there's so many videos of UFOs and so many pictures of UFOs. To find out who's flying them, that's the $1 million question right there. So,
well, why do you think they keep coming into our atmosphere? It just doesn't go hand in hand, because they keep coming all over the world. I mean, they don't. Right. I haven't really seen any of them do any harm or any crazy things. It looks like they're looking for something. That's what I just don't understand. I mean,
they're probably looking for gold, my friend. They're probably looking for gold.
Well, you don't think they don't think you don't think they've harmed you, but think of all the people that are abductees that found a scoop mark scar on their leg, or a little scoop mark scar on their arm, or found an implant in their body. What happened to them during the moments that they can't remember? Were they traumatized and they can't remember? Or now, why is this implant in me? Is it doing my body good? Is it doing it harm? What about the cattle mutilations? Those cattle didn't really feel like it was such a good idea, when they turned up dead, with all their blood sucked out and all their organs gone. That wasn't a really good day for them. So, who knows what... who knows what's the agenda behind all this? It may not be in the best interest for us. No,
and the late Dr. Roger Lear, by the way, was on record saying several times that there were certain implants that really mimicked biology to the point that it was stuck as almost like a symbiote with the person they were trying to get the implant out of. Some of them would actually move away from the scalpel when they were reaching towards the implant. It would actually physically move away as if it knew that it was about to be removed. They've faced a lot of different things, by the way, Dr. Roger Lear.
Well, the implant is obviously, it has the same genetics as the body, the host that it's being put in. So they've already manufactured it to work with that host. Mm-hmm. What it does, if you look at stories by people that have had implants that have had them taken out, for instance, like Jesse Long, when they took out Jesse Long's implant, when Roger Lear removed that, he all of a sudden started having thyroid problems and all sorts of other health problems.
Yep.
And he thought, well, maybe the aliens put that in there because it was helping him. It was some sort of device that they scanned him. They knew what problems he would have, so they stuck something in there to help him so he wouldn't have those problems down the road. And now he removed it, and now there's these problems. But then later on, maybe a few months or a year later, I remember him saying that he woke up one morning and he felt the lump, and there it was again. They put it back there. So they realized that somebody had taken it out. He got re-abducted, and they put it back in. So, you know, they know, like you were saying, when they cut Whitley Strieber's ear open and they tried to pull that implant out of his ear and it moved away from the scalpel.
Yeah.
And that's basically, you know, they're in a ship somewhere, or maybe, you know, looking at their implant on a screen and saying, okay, well, somebody's trying to pull it out, and then they just move it back further in. You know, same thing with, we're on radar, okay, push that button, now we're not, you know, type of a thing. So
I can just imagine the job some alien out there has just looking at screens all day, and if one little light goes off, they know they have to move that implant around. That's somebody's job up there.
They got a joystick, like they're playing Nintendo.
They probably get paid minimum wage, and they're on Obamacare also. But go ahead, caller.
Yeah, I was hearing you guys talk about like them taking your souls or something like that. Now, what I don't understand is, how would they just take your souls and bring it to wherever and do it up there versus just taking your body? Like, would your body be
maybe they're soul eaters.
Like,
well, the thing is both abduction scenarios have been reported by different abductees. Some of them have been removed by just their body, like an astral travel. Like, you know, you go to sleep and some people say they can astral travel. Well, when, you know, they take you out of your body. It's an astral travel abduction, basically. And how it's done is obviously through technology of some sort. And because the being did push a button on his belt, and then Betty Andreasen came out of her body and was standing right next to the being. And then they took her into the craft. They did some operations, and she was put back in her body. And then the next day, the scars were on her body, which is what I'm saying, which is completely weird because they took her in an astral form. Yeah. And then they had done something to her, and then those marks showed up the next day on her physical body. So
she didn't have like no burn marks or anything like that either.
No, the whole point is that they took her astral body, or her spirit, on board, did the operation on the astral part of her, and then the marks just appeared on her body like they had done it to the physical body. That's bizarre. That's freaky.
Wow.
Caller, unfortunately,
it's probably the same way the stigmata works, you know, where people bleed from, you know, I mean, it's the same thing, really. Someone from a different position, like, for instance, let's just say this. Someone
I hate to cut you off, but we're almost out of time, by the way. Caller, real quick, I do have to let you go because we're almost out of time. Like 3 minutes.
All right, well, thank you, guys. You guys have a wonderful night.
Thank you, caller, for calling, and please call in the future. We'd love to take your call. Jeff, like I said, we're running really low on time, and you know, I wanted to give you a couple of, or at least a minute here to plug your website and stuff before we get off the air. And really, we need to have you back on real soon because this is fascinating, and the 2 hours have just flown by. So
I knew it would. What I would basically, it's UFOsoverPhoenix.com. UFOsoverPhoenix.com, and the other website is UFOfootage.net. And I have a new DVD called Paranormal X, Finding E.T. It can be found at the UFOsoverPhoenix.com, and then you click on the DVD button, and it'll take you to a separate DVD page where you can see all my DVDs, not just the new ones, but the other ones as well. And how much time do we have left, guys?
We got about a minute left, and that's about it. So let's just say goodnight for the evening. Jeff, again, thank you so much for being here, and we got to book you back on Skywatchers really, really soon. Cause
absolutely. I got tons more stuff to share with you guys that we barely even got to, but, you know, another day. So
you guys we barely scratched the surface.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. It's been more than interesting, to say the least.
It really has. Jeff, thank you so much again for spending the hour and a half here with us. It's been a pleasure. And I'll be in contact shortly so we can book you back on here very, very soon. Guys, we're all out of time. I know Keith is waiting to push the button, so I got to let you go for the evening. And again, next week we'll be back live here on Skywatchers Radio. Guys, Skywatchers out. Take care, everybody.
Balls of light on the bottom in the broad daylight, flying incredibly fast across the sky. And so mainly after the May 12th, 2006 footage, I filmed different triangles. I filmed a triangle over my house. This one is labeled on my website. By the way, my website's ufosoverphoenix.com. And there's this footage on there called 4/20/2006. And this footage shows a triangle. It basically starts out as two balls of light, and then the one ball disappears, and then there's one light left. Or there was three at first, and one disappears, and there's two left, and then the two turn into some sort of triangular-shaped object, and
right.
it just kind of hovers over my house. So, I mean, the video is amazing in itself.
But, I mean, I've seen some of your footage, man, and I was pretty impressed. I'm going to be honest. I mean, you've put a lot of footage on the internet over the last few years, and I've had this conversation with Alan on the show with many guests that I don't really trust a lot of the footage that goes on the internet, especially the last 10 years, just because of the CGI and all the how easy it is to create some of this stuff. But you can almost always tell right off the bat what's CGI and what's kind of like authentic and legit, or at least something that would really take a lot of work to pull off, you know what I mean? And I've seen that in some of your footage that it really looks as authentic as it gets. As a Skywatcher, though, and somebody who takes the subject as serious as you do and as we do here on the show, does it bug you, though, how, rabid the internet is right now with all the hoaxing and all the people putting up, CGI UFOs and trying to pass them off as real things?
Yeah, it's horrible. It just messes up the whole subject, and it's not good for the subject matter at all because no one knows what to believe anymore. I mean, like we were saying, my footage, you can tell it's shot in the camera, and it's it's some of the most amazing stuff out there. I mean, I shoot a daylight saucer in the middle of the day that you can see in broad daylight. It was featured on that Best Evidence Caught on Tape show by Bob Kiviat. You can see that on YouTube, and it shows me for about 15 minutes talking about my footage, and it's got a short interview of me. My footage has also been featured on the Walt Disney motion picture Race to Witch Mountain with The Rock. Like 5 of my clips are at the beginning of the movie. And
the opener, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So my footage has also been on a DVD with Dan Aykroyd called Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs.
Yep.
And I actually just came out with a new DVD this year. I try to come out with one every year, but the new one's called. There was a lot of good UFO footage shot in that manner, but the problem is there's a lot of junk shot the same way. So what I decided to do in around 98, 99, I decided to completely turn my back on the sun once and for all, and start videotaping footage, in the sky that wasn't related to that way of shooting UFO video. And sure enough, I was started to videotape some of the best smoking gun video sightings I've ever had in my whole life. And it just took off from there at that point.
Well, tell us more.
Okay. Well, first of all, when I first got into the video footage, I was working on a couple different UFO sites as a news editor, and once I did start getting into the smoking gun footage, shooting it myself after a few years of doing the solar technique, I started getting amazing footage. Like I seen triangles, videotape triangles. The May 12, 2006 footage that I shot on North Phoenix on the Thunderbird Park area mountain here in Phoenix. People that are in this area will know what I'm talking about. But I shot this amazing footage, and I was with Pat Uskert from UFO Hunters because this was way before UFO Hunters, like at least a couple of years before the show. But we were putting together a documentary called UFO Road Trip that we were working on, and so we were out investigating sightings in the area, and I caught this video of this triangular object appearing. It was basically lights that were skipping in front of each other, traveling it was weird. It looked like interdimensional travel or something, but all these people that analyzed the video were seeing like a triangle object. Well, the night after we videotaped it, I was like so impressed with the video, I sent it to Arbel, and he called me like very fast. Like it was like an hour after I sent him the video. He called me within an hour, and he told me that he'd like to have me on the show. And I was like, well, sure, So he put me on the show, and we talked about the piece of footage. And it had been a while since I'd been on with Art. I hadn't been on for a few years at that point. I was on a Dreamland show with him, but I was recorded by Linda Moulton Howe on the telephone, and the conversation between me and her were played back on a Dreamland episode about some different video footage I shot. This one, in the Dreamland episode, we were talking about a double dome video. It was like a cigar-shaped object with two domes on top and three.
All right, everybody, we are back live on Skywatchers Radio right here on PSN Radio and the Dark Matter Radio Network. And now, like we promised, our guest Jeff Willis is on with us, and he's going to be on live for the next hour and a half. So please, if you guys want to call in and ask him any questions, do so. The number is 786-245-8127. And again, you can find us on PSN Radio by looking that up on Skype. If you want to look us up on Skype, please do so. Call in. Let's take your calls. The guy that's doing all the heavy breathing there, that's Jeff Willis. Jeff, how you doing, sir? Welcome to Skywatchers Radio.
Hey, Alan. Hey, Angel. How you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good,
wonderful.
Man.
Great. It's great to be on there with you guys.
Happy to have you on.
Jeff, since you're outside, are you recording anything right now?
No, I'm not. I don't see anything out there right now, but you know me, I'm out here watching all the time, most of the time.
Well,
any chance I get.
All right, Jeff, let me throw a question at you just to start opening the questions up. When people are recording, do people mostly find, and even from your own experience, do people mostly find stuff that they're catching on video in post-review, or while they're out there looking for something? Because from my experience and what I've seen that people are posting on the internet, there's a higher percentage of people that weren't really looking for something that caught something accidentally, that they found it in the footage later on.
Well, it always starts out like that, with people, there's, it works both ways. You got the group of Skywatchers that are out all the time just dying to, get their next best piece of footage. And then you got the people that are just out and about doing their own business, and then all of a sudden they see something, and then they're able to record something amazing. And then when they analyze it and they find out that it's not an airplane or not a bird or a helicopter or something conventional, when those type of photographs show up, then it usually gets them involved in the UFO phenomenon. And then after some study, some people get hooked on it, some people don't. So, the people that get hooked, then they are out there skywatching like us, like the rest of us, sooner or later, hopefully.
Now, you got started a long time ago skywatching, and you've amassed, it says on your bio, at least 250 hours of solid UFO footage. Now, that's stuff that you've taken yourself, because we were asking earlier, is it stuff that you've taken or you've bought some of it? Yeah,
it's stuff that I took myself, because I started, I'll give you a little bit detail about how I started with the video photography of it all. You're familiar back in 1990, 91, when the solar eclipse over Mexico happened. Do you recall that?
Oh,
yes.
Sure,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a big thing for ufologists, because as a ufologist, I realized that when the solar eclipse happened, that people saw UFOs. And so a little bit more reading in on the subject, I discovered a guy named John Breaux that lived in California at the time. And I seen an article in the old Timothy Beckley UFO magazine where they had an article about John Breaux, and they talked about how he can videotape a UFO any time of the day. And so I kind of put the two together. I thought, wait a minute, a solar eclipse, and people are seeing UFOs where the sun should be, but it's not. And now here's a guy that blocks out the sun with his house, and he's able to see
solar
UFOs
obliteration,
in broad daylight.
Right, you're talking about the solar obliteration, where
right.
I'm familiar with the process actually. But
right.
from my understanding, more people were recording rods than actual UFOs.
Right,
when they were
and that
doing
was my right, and that was my next step. Is I was going to say later on during that same period, Jose Escamilla came out of nowhere with all these rod footage. And he became famous basically by doing the same thing that John Breaux was doing, and how he became famous in the UFO field. So I put both of them together, and I started doing the same technique, and I started getting both. I started getting lots of rods, and I started getting lots of UFOs. And this was after ruling out which ones were bugs, which ones were cotton, which was high-altitude insects, anything that you can explain away. We took those ones out of the equation, and then we were left with hundreds of hours of videos. And that was just in the solar the solar technique footage. Later on, around I'd say 98 or 1999, I decided that a lot of the hardcore big wigs in ufology, they kind of looked down at the solar footage, and they weren't too keen on it. And a matter of fact, they weren't afraid to tell people about it. So, Paranormal X, Finding ET, and I have basically two websites, UFOsoverPhoenix.com, and I have another one called UFOfootage.net, and so people can check those two sites out.
Jeff, let me ask you, why do you believe that you are able to see UFOs at such a random rate, or at such a high rate over the last couple decades?
Okay, well now I was going to say, now we're opening up a Pandora's box.
Well, let me finish the question. Let me finish the question, and you'll be able to dissect Pandora's box pretty good on this one. Why do you think that you've had success taking so much footage, and a lot of people who've tried have not had as much success? Like for example, I've done a lot of sky watching over the last 5 years, 6 years, and I've had very little success catching anything good. Most of the stuff that I've caught, though, I've chalk it up to like satellites or funky looking planes from a different angle, some balloons from really far away. One thing that a lot of people get and they really don't understand sometimes when they're recording videos, there are occasions, especially during the weekend, where nearby car dealerships will release a bunch of balloons to replenish for the next week, to put new ones up, and they usually tie them in a bunch and they just release them. People see that from far away, they record it, they think it's a UFO, next thing you know, it's on YouTube as an authentic UFO. That happens all the time.
It happens all the time. There's lots of Skywatchers that post it, and the problem is it started a whole new phenomenon of people that think that the strings on balloons are some sort of propulsion system or some sort of arm that picks up animals or some crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, they're tentacles. I'm telling you, they're tentacles.
Yeah, tentacles, exactly. That's where I was going with it, and it just brings up a whole bunch of crazy people that just can't get past the fact that it's a balloon floating through the sky. I mean, I just don't get it.
But what's made you so successful compared to those people that are just fooling themselves?
Well, I mean, I take my footage and I look at it. If it looks like a balloon, if I can't tell if it's a balloon or not, or if there's no string on it and it still looks like it could be a balloon, it has to look more like an orb or more like a bona fide UFO before I'll post it. And you know, I mean, I try not to post just the white dots, you know, that I got so many of them that I haven't even posted online that it's not even worth posting them. You know, I wait to basically shoot some smoking gun video, and then I put it up there. I shot kind of a